Masechet Ketubot Afkof Dalid. We are in the middle of the story of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi's last will and testament. How did we get to this? It's because the halacha, the Mishnah, was talking about the right of a widow to say, I want to remain in my house, in my husband's house, and she has a right to do that and to still use all the furnishings and the servants and live the same lifestyle. If she wants, under some circumstances, she can demand that she will live in her father's house, and she has to get the food there. The orphans, the heirs have to deliver the food there, for example, if they're all young, and it would be inappropriate for them to live together. So that was the context we were talking about, and that's why in the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said that they should continue to honor their mother, and we interpret that to mean it means their stepmother. In other words, treat her well. Okay, so that was the story. It's important to recognize that there's actually a baraita, a long-running baraita, that's interrupted by the Talmud Bavli. And here in this version, I put the baraita in bold, and you see the baraita has three sections, A, B, and C, and each time there's the Talmud Bavli, it gives an interpretation of it. It's important to separate, the bold is the baraita, to separate the two layers because each layer has its own meaning. You can see that in the original baraita, and this is confirmed by the Talmud Yerushalmi, when the B says that you should be careful with the honor of my wife, and here it says imechem, in Yerushalmi it says of the almana, of my wife, my widow, and then the next line that you should make sure that the lamp will still be lit in its place, and the table set in its place, and the bed in its place. This is talking about for his wife, so that she will remain living where she was living before and still be used to everything as is, to have this nice luxury of having light lit at night and the same table and the same bed. They can't kick her downstairs and to sleep in a small room in the basement or anything like that. So that's the original meaning, and then you see the Talmud Bavli adds another layer, which is the whole story about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi coming back in a soul ghost-like form. So that's super interesting. You could see this also here, where Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, "Do not eulogize me in the towns and make a yeshiva after 30 days." The simple reading of that is that they should. He's trying to limit his honor, and saying, don't make a big deal, make everybody in the farms all come to the villages, and you should, continue normally. And in 30 days, then you'll make a shiur in my memory in the yeshiva. That'll be a way of honoring me. So it's actually to make a yeshiva, to make a memorial service after 30 days, not for all 30 days. And Talmud Bavli goes and elaborates on that and says they did 30 days just because Moshe was the same, and but really they went even longer. They did half a day. Okay, so it's important to separate the various layers here, and you see there's a lot actually going on. The last part is you can see what the Talmud Bavli is trying to get to, where it says that the Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said you should always, he told his son, Gamliel, you should rule harshly, with be high and mighty. And Talmud says, really? But then Yehoshaphat himself was a king. He gave honor to the sages. It says, yeah, that's true. So you see that even the Nasi, they're kind of hinting, at least in private, the Nasi, who is like a king, should still give honor to the sages. So this is about really the balance of power, and the Nasi is important, but is the political head, but the sages are the religious heads. And so, yes, while you need that balance of power, you have to make sure that the Nasi does not take advantage and take too much power. So there's a lot going on here. There's an important article by Professor Shaya Cohen comparing this last will and testament to the similar last wills of the heads of the philosophical schools in Greco-Roman philosophical schools. Also had students, and they had a head, and when the head would die, he would have a last will appointing who's going to be the next head. You can compare the style and content of these two different of this story with those. So if anybody wants that article, you could send me a message, and I'm happy to send it to you. All right, we continue the story. On the day that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was going to die, he didn't die yet, the sages made a fast and were begging for mercy that he should not die. He's on his deathbed, but the rabbis are all getting together and praying that he should live longer. And furthermore, the rabbis announced that anyone who says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi has died, we're going to stab him with a sword. In other words, we don't want anyone to say it. Don't announce it just by saying it. Maybe that'll make it come quicker. And therefore, nobody should give in to the fact that he's going to die. Right? We're going to pray. We're going to storm the heavens, and we're gonna make him live. Okay. Selika amted Rabbi leigra amra elyonim bakshim et Rabbi v'atachtonim bakshim et Rabbi yirason sheyakofu hatachtonim et elyonim. And the maidservant of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, we already saw her in the previous story. She's the one that revealed that Rabbi comes as a ghost every Friday night and to the neighbor, and that's why she didn't come anymore. He didn't come anymore. But she seems to have been learned herself. She knew Hebrew words, and she knew a lot of things. And here you see her making her own prayer. She goes up to the roof and she says, and she said, the upper realms are requesting Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, meaning that he should die and go up to the upper realm. Meanwhile, the lower realms, the rabbis down here, are requesting Rabbi and making sure that he stays here and stays alive. So she prays that, I hope that the will of the lower world should impose its will on the upper world. I hope that the rabbis here will win and Rabbi Yehuda will get better and continue to live. But then she changed her mind. We saw before that it says righteous people, they die from intestinal disease. And so that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had intestinal disease. He kept going to the bathroom, and every time he goes to the bathroom, he has to remove his tefillin. And then he goes to the bathroom, and he comes out, and he has to put them back on. And he had terrible suffering. You see how many times he's running to the bathroom. And so she saw how much suffering Rabbi Yehuda was in. Then she changed her prayer and said, Amra, hirason sheyakofu elyonim tachtonim. You know what? May the will of the upper world win out and impose its will on the lower world. In other words, that maybe it is better if this is his time, then he should be taken out of his suffering. This also is a really important source regarding end-of-life questions. Of course, we never withhold life support, but the question is, when a person is in tremendous suffering and it's clear that they're at their end of their life, is it okay to pray that Hashem do His will, right? Whatever is best for the person. So this would be a source that would be permitted. Okay. Even though, nevertheless, the rabbis, they would not be silent. They would not stop from asking for mercy that he should live. And so he couldn't die. The rabbis actually were preventing him from dying naturally and in the end, extending his suffering. So the maidservant took matters into her own hands. And she took a jug and threw it from the roof onto the ground and made a distraction. The rabbis who were inside, they said, what was that noise? And so just for a moment they went to look to see what happened, and they stopped praying. At that moment, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died. Okay, amazing story. So sages said, go see what's going on with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. He was in a different room. They asked Bar Kapara, see if he's okay. Bar Kapara goes and sees indeed that Rabbi has died. So Bar Kapara himself tore his clothing, as one must if in the presence of someone who died, and he's also his teacher. But he hid the tear, he put it behind him because he didn't want to yet show everyone that indeed Rabbi has died. So Bar Kapara wanted to break the news slowly to the people. Also, remember they just said, anyone who says that Rabbi died, we're going to stab him. So he didn't want to be stabbed. He didn't want to say the news directly. Instead, he came back in, hiding his tear, and he says the angels and the righteous people both are grabbed on to the Aron HaKodesh. Aron HaKodesh, a metaphor for Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And the upper worlds want him, and the lower worlds want him, and the angels won out. and the Aron Kodesh has been captured and taken from us. So he's saying it in an indirect way that Rabbi died. And they got the message. Amru le nach nafshe, did he die? The rabbis say, Amar lehu, Bakapara says, Atun kamritu, v'ana la kamina. You said it, I didn't say it. I only gave a hint, but you're the ones that said it, so he broke the news to them in that way. Now we're going back in time a little, just before he died. This whole series of stories, the chronology is interesting. It keeps jumping back and forth. So right before he died, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi lifted up his 10 fingers. He says, Hashem, you know that I toiled with all my 10 fingers in the Torah. He's the compiler, after all, of the Mishnah. And I didn't benefit from anything from the Torah, from that I did, not even a tiny finger's worth. I never got any personal benefit from all the Torah that I toiled in. So may it be God's will that my rest should be in peace. And sure enough, a divine voice came out and said, yes, he will come in peace. And then, curiously, the pasuk in Yeshaya switches from singular to plural. He says, he will come in peace. They will rest on their beds. So we're going to ask about this. There's a lot of themes that repeat, like going up to the roof, just like the launder went up to the roof. And here the bat call that comes and confirms that he will go, like we had a bat call before also. Okay. Now we ask, since it started in singular, he will come in peace. It should say, Yanuach al mishkabcha, that he will rest on his bed. Why the plural? When a righteous person dies, the angels announce to God that God, this righteous person is coming. He's coming here to the afterlife. So God decrees that all the righteous people who are in the afterworld should come and greet the person. Like, if you're in your house and an important person comes, you go to the door and you greet your guests. So now everybody should come out and greet Rabbi who's coming. And they tell him, Yabo b'shalom, come in peace. So that's why he has the singular. That's all the righteous that are telling Rabbi, come in peace. And after they greet him, they all, plural, go back and rest on their beds. So that's why it goes from singular to plural. They all then rest together. Amar Rabbi Elazar b'shasha sadik. A similar theme, when a righteous person dies, 3 groups of angels come and greet him. One says welcome. It's a continuation of a pasuk. He who walks straight. And the other quotes the rest of the pasuk, come in peace, and then they rest on their beds. On the other hand, when a wicked person dies, 3 angels of destruction go to him, and they also greet that person with 3 negative pisukim. One is, there will be no peace for the wicked. Another pasuk in Yeshaya, you will lie down in sorrow. Go down and be lay down with the uncircumcised. All right, so that ends that story about Rabbeinu HaKadosh and his last will and testament. And now we go to the next Mishnah. Kol zeman shehi bebet abiyah goba ketubata le'olam. Kol zeman shehi bebet ba'ala goba ketubata ad 25 shanim. Sheyesh be-25 shanim sheta'aseh tova keneged ketubata divrei Rabbi Meir shamar mishum Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. All right, the first half of the Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who said in the name of Rashbag that there's a time limit after which a almana can no longer collect her ketubah. But it depends on where she is. If she is in her father's house, she can collect forever, right? If she goes and decides to live in her father's house and she doesn't collect her ketubah right away, she can collect any time. Even after 50, 60 years, she can collect it. But if she is continuing to live in her husband's house, right, with the heirs of her husband, then she has only 25 years to come and claim the ketubah. The reason is because while she's living in her in her husband's house, it's likely that she will give charity. There's poor people will come to the door and she'll give them some bread, she'll give them things, and over time she is taking the property of the heirs and giving it to others. And now it's only a little bit at a time, but over 25 years, that's what we estimate she will have depleted the amount of her ketubah by giving it to others. Now, the amount that she gets herself, that she eats and spends herself, that is no problem, because the ketubah says that the heirs have to feed her, provide for her. So that does not deplete the ketubah amount, right? She can still take the full lump sum of the ketubah at any time. But the amount that any amount that she gives to others that she's not benefiting from herself, that does deplete the ketubah. So we estimate that she'll be giving away about 4% of her full ketubah each year, and over 25 years, there's going to be nothing left. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Whereas if she's in her father's house, so then if she gives something to poor people, she's giving her father's money away, not the money of the heirs. So that does not deplete it at all, and that's why she can collect forever. All right, that's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, minority opinion, but Chachamim omerim kol zman she bebet ba'ala goba ketubata leolam, kol zman she bebet abiyah goba ketubata ad 25 shanim. They say the opposite. There is also a limit, but as long as she is in her husband's house, she can collect forever. Their reasoning is different. While she's in her husband's house, they are feeding her, so she's dependent on them. So she's embarrassed to ask for ketubah while they're also providing for her. So since she has a good reason not to ask for a ketubah, even after a long time, so we don't count that against her. We don't assume that she forgave her ketubah payment, so she can collect at any time. But when she's in her father's house, then and she's not getting benefit from the heirs, so she wouldn't be embarrassed to ask for it. So she should ask for it. If she doesn't ask for it for 25 years and she has no reason not to, then we take that as an indication that she forgave the ketubah payment, and then she cannot collect it anymore. All right. Meta yorsheh maskirin ketubata ad 25 shanim. If the widow dies, her heirs can come and claim the ketubah payment. Right? The heirs of the husband still have to pay it. They have to pay to the heirs of the widow, but they also have 25 years to collect it. If they don't collect it, if they don't claim it, they have to mazkir, they have to mention, by the way, you owe us that the ketubah payment. As long as they mention it, then that will restart the clock for another 25 years. אמר לאביי לרב יוסף, ענייה שבישראל עד 25 שנים, ואמרת בת ביתוס עד 25 שנים. So begin with a question. Abaye asks Rav Yosef about the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who said that a woman normally will deplete her entire ketubah by giving by giving away money to poor people in 25 years. This doesn't make sense. A very poor person, she has 25 years, and the richest person that they knew was Marta bat Baitos. She was very, very wealthy, also 25 years. In other words, it actually should depend on the amount of the ketubah. If usually, how much charity do you give? How many poor people are there? Is it $10 a day? Okay, so that should be the same for everyone. And the ketubah of a rich person should take much longer to deplete, and that the smaller ketubah of a poor person should take a shorter time to be depleted, right? And the answer is, according to the camel is the load. A strong camel can carry a strong load. A weak camel, a weak one. So too, a wealthy person like Marta bat Baitos, she's giving away a lot of money. A poor person is going to give away only a little bit of money. But it's the same ratio. Both of them are going to give away about 4% each year So after 25 years, they'll deplete 100% of their ketubah. So according to that, according to the Meir, that she gives away 4% every year, does that mean that we should divide the amount of her ketubah payout according to the year? If it's after 5 years, then she should only get paid 80% of it, and we should pay her pro rata based on how far in. I mean, it makes sense if she does in fact give away the property of her heirs. So does that count against her, or maybe we assume that the heirs are okay with her giving away some money to charity from their own funds, and maybe it doesn't count against her. So that question is left standing. Teko. Hachamim omedim kol zeman. So now, according to the majority opinion, as long as she's in her husband's house, she can collect any time, forever. Amar le'Abaye Rav Yosef, Atai kodem shikyat hama, go back to bata. Lachar shikyat hama, lo lagabya, bahi purta achelta. Abaye has a challenge to this. When she's in her father's house, it says that she can collect for 25 years. After 25 years, she can no longer collect. So Abaye's question is, look, if it was before sunset, let's say it was from the day that the husband died until, count 25 years, to the day. So before sunset, she could come and collect the whole amount. If she just waits a few minutes right after sunset, now we assume she lost the right because she waived her right to the ketubah. In that small amount of time, just a few minutes, we're going to assume that she waived her right. Should it make such a big difference? A few minutes earlier or a few minutes later, she gets all the money or she gets none of the money? Does that make sense? And Rav Yosef's answer is yes. Amar le'in kol midat chachamim ken hi bal ba'im se'ah tobel ba'im se'ah v'chasen kol tov eno yachol litbol bahen. In fact, all the measurements of the sages are like that, right? This is any law is going to have a prescribed measure, and so a little bit less, a little bit more. For example, and a mikveh has to be 40 se'ah. If it has 40 se'ah, you could do tevilah, and everything's kosher. If she's tameh or a man's tameh, they'll be kosher. If someone's converting, the conversion will be valid. And if it's 40 se'ah, just less, even a tiny amount, less than 40 se'ah, then you cannot go. And if you use that for a mikveh, the person will not be, the convert will not be converted. The person will remain tameh. Woman will be nidah with all the consequences that come along with it. So that's the same thing in any case. When you have to get your taxes in on time, you have to make sure it's postmarked exactly before midnight on tax day. And if it's not, there's a big difference. So that's anytime you have a cutoff, you can ask that same question. Interesting, he says, calls midat chachamim, that it's the rabbis that decide. Torah says you have to go to mikveh. Torah says a lot of things, and the rabbis that decide the exact amount, so that there should be an exact cutoff, so that will be a prescribed measurement. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Ha'id Rabbi Ishmael Rabbi Yosef Ifnei Rabbi Shamar Mishum Aviv. Okay, we have Rav Yehuda said name of Rav that Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi, said to Rabbi in the name of his father. Okay, so there's a lot of attributions. Let's call this the law of Rav. Said Lo shanu ela she'en shetar ketubah yoseh mitachat yadeha. Says when in the Mishnah said that the woman cannot collect after 25 years, that's only if she does not have the ketubah document in her hand, and she's collecting it just based on the general obligation of a husband to pay ketubah, even without having a ketubah. But if she still has the ketubah document in her hand, she can collect forever. Right? That shows that she didn't forgive it. Otherwise, she would have ripped it up. She still has it. She can collect. Rabbi Elazar amar afilu shetar ketubah yoseh mitachat yadeha ena gova ela ad 25 shanim. Rabbi Elazar disagrees and says that even if she has the ketubah, she didn't take it, she didn't bring it and asked for the ketubah payment, so then after 25 years, she cannot collect, even with the document. Okay, so now we're going to have a challenge to the first opinion, that if she has a document, then she can collect forever. We're going to challenge it a couple of times. Mativ Rav Sheshat. Baal Chov Goveh Shelo Behazkara. This is a braita, it's also found in the Tosefta, that says a creditor can collect even without mentioning anything. He doesn't have to have a reminder, oh, by the way, you owe me money. He can collect any time after 25 years, after 50 years. The credit is still good. Okay, that's the statement. Let's analyze. If he doesn't have a loan document, well, how is he going to collect without a loan document? But he does have a loan document. And we're going to infer from this baraita that it's specifically true only to a creditor, someone who gave out a loan. And that person can collect. And we don't assume that they will waive their rights to collect, so they can collect any time. But this comes to exclude a widow who is coming to collect her ketubah. Even if she has the ketubah, she has to collect within 25 years, right? It's only the Baal Chov that doesn't have to give a reminder, have to mention it, but Almanah does have to mention it, otherwise she cannot collect. And so this goes against the Tanakama here, who said that she, if she has a document, she can collect forever. This baraita seems to be against it, although it's only an inference. So we're going to say, no, hu motiv la, hu mefarek la. Rav Shashat asked the question, and he figured out the answer too. Could be that this baraita is actually talking about where there is no loan document. So how's he collecting? When the borrower admits, yes, I do owe you money, and that's why he's able to collect that way. And so the baraita is saying that if indeed the borrower admits that he owes, the creditor can collect any time, and he doesn't have to remind and give a mention every 25 years. So really, this is not talking about a case where they have the document, and therefore it's not relevant. There's no proof either way to the statement of Rav that if you have a document, then Almanah cannot waive it, so we solve the problem. Okay. V'ha'amar Rabbi El'ah, shonin gerusha harehi kebal chob. Second proof, second challenge to Rav's rule is from this baraita that says a woman who's divorced is like a creditor. So another just like a creditor in that she can collect forever. And she doesn't have to mention anything. What kind of case are we talking about? If this divorcee does not have a ketubah document, how is she going to collect? Must be that she has a document. And this baraita is specifying that it's only a gerusha who is like a Baal Chov, is like a creditor, and she is not going to forgive what's owed to her. After all, she's a divorcee, and usually there's a lot of tension between the divorcee and the husband and his family, and so she's not going to forgive. She wants to collect. So that's why she can collect even after 25 years. But an almanah who is in a similar situation and has a ketubah, she doesn't use it for 25 years, we assume that she forgave the payment of the ketubah. And that's a challenge to the Rav statement that almanah after 25 years with a document can collect forever. So we answer, here also we're talking about a case where there was in fact no ketubah, and the ex-husband admits that he has to pay, and that's why she can collect forever. But if there was a document, that's why it's not relevant. This whole case is talking about when there's no document, but it's not a challenge to Rav's statement because Rav was talking about when there is a ketubah document, and so his statement stands. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Tanei Rav Yehuda bar Kaza b'matnita deber bar Kaza taba'a ketubata harehi kebatechila ve'im haya shetar ketubah yoseh mitachat yadeha goba ketubata le'olam. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak quotes the following baraita from the school of Bar Kaza, that if a widow demanded her ketubah, then it resets the clock, right? After 20 years or so, she says, I want my ketubah, then she can collect it, even if she doesn't bring it up again for another 25 years, she can collect it at that point. And if she has a ketubah, an actual ketubah document, then she can collect forever. So you see that this baraita actually supports the statement of Rav and adds another chidush that as long as you mention it sometime in between, that extends the time even without a ketubah document. שלח לרב נחמן בר רב חיסדא לרב נחמן בר יעקב, ילמדנו רבנו, כששטר כתובה יוצא מתחת ידה מחלוקת, או כשאין שטר כתובה יוצא מתחת ידה, והלכה כדברי מי. Okay, so now a question from one Rav Nachman to the other Rav Nachman regarding our Mishnah, that there was a dispute between Rabbi and Rabbanan about this 25-year limit. Where does it apply? Is there a 25-year limit when she's in her she's in her husband's house? That's Bimeir. Or is it when she's in her father's house that she has up to 25 years? That was Rabbanan. That machloket in the Mishnah, which case was it talking about? Was it talking about a case where she has a ketubah? And even if she has a ketubah, nevertheless, there is a limitation and she cannot collect. In other words, this would be against the statement of Rab before. Or is that machloket when there's no ketubah? But if there were a ketubah document, she could collect forever, no matter where she is. Right? So which case is the Mishnah talking about? Mishnah doesn't say. Second question is, who does the halacha follow? Rabbi Meir or Chachamim? And the answer, Shalach le b'she'en shtar ketubah yoseh mitachat yada machloket. Machloket is when there's no shtar ketubah. She's collecting based on that. Even if there's no ketubah document, the husband has to pay, or the estate has to pay the widow. And so, but if there is a physical document, she can collect forever, anytime. That supports the statement of Rav earlier, and this also this baraita that we saw at the end. And the halacha l'maaseh is like the chachamim, that if she is in her father's house, then she has the limit. But if she's in her husband's house, then she's embarrassed to collect, because she's getting money, she's getting sustenance as well. So as long as she's in her husband's house, there's no limit. Okay. Ki ata Rav Dimi amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi mishum bar kapara lo shanu ela manya batayim abar tosefet yesh la. Another limitation on this 25-year limit is that it applies only to the base amount of 100 or 200. That's what she would lose after 25 years. But the additional amount, if the husband wrote another $1,000 that she gets no matter what. That's a gift that he's giving her, and she's not forgiving that. She can continue to collect that forever. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan said, even the extra amount, also the time limit applies to. After 25 years, she won't collect anything. As she won't collect the base amount or the added amount. She would, of course, get back her land that she owns. And this statement of Rabbi Yochanan follows the other statement that says a stipulation in the marriage contract has the same law as the marriage contract itself. So the added amount is the same as the basic 100 or 200. So another statement supporting the statement above here, in the name of Bar Kapara, is more lenient for her, that this time limit of 25 years is only for the 100 and 200, but the added amount she can collect. Amar, even after 25 years. Amar le Rabbi Abba, le Rav Huna, Amar Rav Hachi, and so this was said in the name of Rav. Rabbi Abba said to Rav Huna, who quoted it in the name of Rav, says, "Are you sure that Rav said this?" Amar le, and Rav Huna said back to Rabbi Abba, "Why are you asking me that question? Right? What exactly is your tone? Ishtikan kamat? Are you saying it so I'll be quiet and not repeat it, meaning you're against this halacha? Are you saying it like, did Rav really say that? I don't think Rav would say that it applies only to the 100, 200, and not to the added. Or ashkiyan kamart? Or are you asking me a question in a way that you agree with it, meaning to give me a drink? You want to give a toast to this fantastic statement, and you're saying, "Wow, Rav really said that, right? Are you sure? That's amazing." Okay, so in Aramaic they're almost the same. Ishtikan or ashkiyan? Are you trying to silence me, or are you trying to give me a drink? What was your tone exactly? Amar le ishtikan kamina. I was trying to silence you. I do not agree with this halacha, right? But rather, like Rabbi Yochanan, that she would lose the entire amount of the ketubah after the 25 years. All right, and now we have a story. Chamte de Rav Chiya Aricha. The mother-in-law of Rabbi Chiya the Tall, he was tall, in Tat Achu Havai, was also the wife of his brother. So, in other words, a man's mother-in-law was also his sister-in-law. And that can happen if two brothers marry a mother and a daughter, which is permitted. A person cannot marry a mother and daughter, but one brother marries the mother and the other brother marries the daughter. Then his brother's wife is also his wife's mother. Okay, so this happened. The widow, in the meantime, is living in her father's house. She chose not to live in her husband's house, so she's there. And nevertheless, Rav Chiya would provide sustenance, food, for his mother-in-law, sister-in-law, for 25 years in her father's house. Okay, now, Lesof Amra le habli mezoneh. After 25 years, she says, give me my sustenance. Amar la letach mezoneh says, that's it, no, it ran out, 25 years, done. Habli ketubah, she says, okay, pay me the full marriage contract. Amar la mezoneh itlach v'la ketubah itlach. So sorry, 25 years, you're not living here, you're living in your father's house. We're following the majority opinion of the Mishnah, that she's living in her father's house, and she doesn't collect her ketubah in 25 years. That's it, the payments are over. No mizanot, no lump sum payment. So Rabbi Chiya seems to be in the right. But she takes him to court. She and Rabba bar Shela judges the case. So Rabba bar Shela says, tell me the details of the case, please. Zaneta 25 shanim bebe nasha. Rav Acha, the tall, Rav Chiya, rather, the tall, says, I provided her for 25 years while she was in her father's house. And I swear by the life of the master that I delivered her food on my own shoulders. I physically went and brought her sandwiches of food every day to the house, her family's house. Amar le, tamamai amora banan, kol zeman shei bebet aba'ala, koba ketubata le'olam, damrina mishum kisufahu de la tab'a. So, the judge, Rabba bar Shela, says, what's the reasoning of Chachamim that when she's in her husband's house, she can collect forever? Because we say she's embarrassed to ask for the ketubah payment since she's being fed and being taken care of there in her husband's house. Here also, that reason applies. Even though she's in her father's house, nevertheless, you are coming and providing her personally with food, so she is embarrassed to collect. So, ironically, Rabbi Chiya's own testimony of how well he takes care of his mother-in-law, sister-in-law, this widow, actually turned against him. If he hadn't been taking care of her, then she would not be embarrassed to collect her ketubah. But because he went out of his way and took care of her so well, she was embarrassed. And that, since we have a reason why she didn't collect her ketubah, we cannot assume that she forgave it. And so therefore, Rabba bar Shela said, you have to pay. Nevertheless, Rabbi Chiya, you have to pay. Okay, La'ashkach, Rabbi Chiya didn't agree, and he decided to ignore the ruling. Katab la ad rachta an nichse. Rabba bar Shela, the judge, wrote her an authorization document that she can go and seize property from him to pay her ketubah. Atalekame de Rava. They came to Rava. Amar le hazimor hechi danan. Rabbi Chiya comes to Rava and says, look, Master Rava, look at what Rabba bar Shela said, that now that he's going to collect my land. Amar le shapir danach. Rava says, that's right. He's right. You should have to pay, because even though technically you're right, Rabbi Chiya, that it is after 25 years and she was in her husband's house, but you have to look at the reason. She was in her father's house, but you have to look at the reasoning behind the law, and therefore, yes, you have to pay. Amra le. Now the woman says to Rava, she sees that she's winning, right? So she wants to get the full extent of what's coming to her. Says, Yachi, lezeli hadarli pered min hahu yoma ad haidana. I want further the produce that has grown on the property that I'm going to collect from the day I received this authorization document until today. Right, since from that time, I had a lien. I owned this property. I just took time for it to get to me. I want him to pay all the back produce for that land from that time. Amad la achvili ad rachtech. Rava says, let me see the document, right? Let's see exactly what's written in it. Chazye de lahava katuba ve'ishte moda'na din chasim elu demitna inun. It was missing a key phrase, a phrase that says, that it is known to us, to the judges, that the properties that she can take belonged to the estate of the deceased. In other words, the law is that she can only collect from land that belonged to her husband. She cannot collect from land that belongs to Rabbi Chia himself, his own land. That has to be the land that he inherited from the estate. And that was missing. So that meant that she can collect from any of the land. And it isn't true. Amala adrachta lav shapir ketiba. And Rava said, your authorization to collect land is invalid. And because it's missing this key line. According to this, you can collect everything. It's simply not true. Therefore, you know what? You're not getting any produce based from the time that this was written, since the whole thing is invalid. She says, okay, fine. But Amra le tezil adrachta eshkom yoma deshlimi yoma dachrazta ad hashta. Fine. I'm not going to claim the produce from the time that this letter that was written, but at least give me the produce from the time of the announcement. In other words, the Bet Din already started the process of collecting, and they make an announcement, right, for 30 days before for a public auction. So from that time on, surely from that time on, I have a right to the produce. Give me that. Rava says, Amar la hanemi lehecha de la ketib te'uta ba'adrachta, aval lecha de ketib te'uta ba'adrachta le'etlan ba. Says, yeah, you would get it from the time of the announcement on, only if there was no mistake. But here, there's a mistake in your document of authorization, and so it's null and void. And you can't even collect from the time of from the announcement. That announcement, we're going to take, right, that announcement itself is based on an invalid document, so sorry, you can't have the produce. This widow, she knows her halacha, and she says, wait, but master, you're the one that taught that a guarantee on a guarantee of sale from a document is a scribal error. In other words, if we write up a document of sale and we forget to write that the seller will guarantee the sale, that should be recollected from the buyer, that the buyer can come back to the seller and say, hey, give me my money back. Even if the scribe forgets that line, we assume that it's his problem that the scribe's problem that he forgot it, but it's still as if it's written in the document. So even if you don't write it, it's the same as if it's written. So she says it should be the same thing here, even though this document of authorization had a wrong phrase in it. So you should assume that it's still okay. So it's just a scribal error, but it should still be valid. Rava said, no, in this case we cannot blame it on the scribe. If it's just a scribal error and we know what they meant when they wrote it, then it would still be valid. But here it wasn't just a scribal error. Rabba Bar Shela, the original judge, he's the one that made the mistake, and it's actually a mistake in ruling. Mekarahu sebur hane vehane dideh mali mehane, because Rabba Bar Shela at first when he wrote that thought that she can collect both from Rabbi Chia's own land and from the estate of the deceased, because what's the difference? Since the Rabbi Chia is the one that inherited everything, so he owns all the land, and so what's the difference if she collects from this and that? And that's why he wrote the document that way. He meant it. It was not it was not written in error. He thought the whole judgment was an error, and therefore his entire judgment, that whole document, is null and void. Right? We have to write a new one that you'll be able to collect, but you will not be able to collect from the past produce. Now, why was he wrong? Velohi, Rava explains. Zimnin de'azla mishabecha lehu u'deba'ala michsefe. Because the reason why we have to be very careful in the document to say that she can only collect from the land that did belong to the deceased husband is because otherwise the brother, the one who's taking care, whoever is taking care of the property, can trick the widow, because sometimes the estate, in this case, the brother, the Richiya, would give her a piece of land that actually belongs to him. She will, in the meantime, invest it, improve it, and the land that did belong to the deceased will go bad, and then he'll see that and say, "Oh, look how much work she put into it. That land is worth much more." And then the brother can turn around, the live one, "V'amar shekel didach v'hab li didi." You know what? Take yours and give me mine. I gave you land that actually belonged to me. I want to switch now. And he would have a right to take his own land and say, "No, you take the land of your deceased husband." Fatel bukelaz al bedina, and that would look bad for the court, because everybody would say, look at what the court does. Gives her land, she improves it, and then he has a right to go and switch it and take this improved land and give her bad land. And this would not look well good for the court. It also wouldn't be good for her. So therefore, in order to protect the reputation of the court, and also, ironically, to protect the woman herself, and the women in general, so that they should, if they get land, they know that they get to keep the land and they can improve it, invest in it, and they will keep it. In order to achieve that goal, Rava said, "Sorry, but you, in this particular case, your document of authorization is wrong, and therefore you cannot collect from the past produce. So we'll have to write up a new document so that you can collect from the land of your deceased husband." So that's a very good story to end the perek. Hazran Allah Chanoseh Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen ve'amen.